So, welcome to Cloud Busting Live. Quick show of hands. Has anyone heard our Cloud Busting podcast? A few, a couple. Hopefully, we'll have a lot more followers now, subscribers. That's the whole plan. So, let me introduce myself. We work for a company called CloudReach, but we have a little podcast called Cloud Busting, and it's a podcast we started 2 years ago. So I'd just like to introduce who we've got on stage today before we get into the trends. Firstly, my co-host, Dave. Dave, do you want to just introduce yourself, say hi?
Yeah, hi. My name's Dave Chapman. I'm the Chief Strategy Officer at CloudReach, and good to be here today.
Great. I'm also joined by Tara. Tara, would you like to introduce yourself, say hi?
Hi everyone, I'm Tara Tapper and I am Chief People Officer at CloudReach.
And also I'd like to introduce Keisha, a friend of the show.
Yes, Keisha Garcia. I am with BP, and I am the VP for Digital Foundations at BP.
Excellent. So they're going to help us talk through the trends that we're going to be coming up with. And there's a couple of things that we like to do on our show, for any of those who've heard it. One of them is what we like to call a cloudy cliffhanger.
Always a highlight of the show.
Always a highlight of the show. Normally it's something to do with cloud and some kind of statistics that may have come out. But we thought, well, you know what? We are at reInvent, so why don't we do a little reInvent cloudy cliffhanger? So I'm going to ask the whole audience to stand up if you wouldn't mind, please.
Do we need to do something?
No, you guys don't need to stand up.
Okay.
So I've got a question for you. The first reInvent had 6,000 attendees, okay? Last year, 2 years ago, in 2019, there were over 60,000, so a 10 times increase in the 8 years that it was. Last year, it was virtual. We did this trends in a virtual way last year. I'm going to ask you a question, and we're going to have two choices of answer. And I'm going to ask you to, as an audience, guess what you think the right answer might be. So, how many people do you think registered for reInvent last year, given that it was virtual? You have two choices. Choice A, 380,000. Choice B, 540,000. Dave, before I ask the audience, what do you think?
Significant uplift on the general one, yeah. But I'm going to go B.
B, 540,000. Okay. Tara?
Oh, difficult one, like A, I'd say.
A, 380,000. Keisha?
I normally like to go the opposite of Dave, but I think I'm going to go with him this time.
Going with Dave, 540,000.
First time for everything, Keisha.
Yeah, I know, right?
Yeah.
So,
I hope you don't
audience,
regret it.
if you think it's answer A, 380,000, please sit down. So I'm going to say it's probably about 20%. So the rest of you think it's 540,000. Well, the correct answer is, you're going to have to wait. That's why we call it the cloudy cliffhanger.
And you have to stay standing until...
You may all sit down now. So we're going to talk about trends, and I'm going to hand over to Dave at this point. Dave?
All right, thanks, Jez. So hi, everybody. Thanks for making the session today. So the trends is something that we do every year, and what we try to do is talk about what happens when the customer interfaces with cloud and the big significant things that customers are trying to do and in terms of leveraging the cloud. This is a quote from Gartner's recent Magic Quadrant, where they talk about cloud in a way that we are wholly supportive of, which is a much rounder view of what it takes to drive cloud transformation. And the promise of the cloud for us is about a dimensional view of the technology, but also aspects of the culture and the ways of working that go around that. And it's highly contextual to the specific customer that you're talking about. So where one customer might think the promise of the cloud is to exit data centers and to take costs down, another customer might have a completely different perspective based on business modernization or something along those lines. So for us, understanding that context and bringing that together with what the cloud's trying to do is central to actually delivering on whatever the promise is for that particular customer. So we're going to talk through 6 trends with the help of our guests here. And the idea is when these trends weave together to create a full picture of what it looks like in 2022 to try and achieve a dimensional cloud transformation program. So the first one is about what it looks like when you join up the current two modes of adoption of the cloud. So mode one is something we're all very familiar with, I think, in this day and age, which is IT-driven adoption. And IT-driven adoption is generally a scaled version of adopting the cloud. It is usually a cost-centric business case, so it's to do with taking cost out of a business. And it often looks like a data center exit program, quite high velocity, quite high volume, and often gets into quite politically difficult straits as it goes through because cadence is very hard to achieve, etc. The second mode of adoption is more like business experimentation, where it's around the edge of a business. It might be driven by a product owner or a CDO or something along those lines. And it generally involves one business unit or more entering into some sort of product deal. And that pattern of business experimentation around the edge with large-scale IT shifting is something we see in a great deal of enterprises today. But what we think happens is when you join that up, things become much more interesting. And that might sound like an obvious thing to say, but actually the politics and sometimes large-scale organizations are not great at talking to each other, so they're not making that leap into what that might look like. So we think that joining up of those two things, plus bringing that together with new ways of working and cloud-native culture, can create very profound shifts at enterprise level in organizations. The big example that we always use, because there aren't many that are this sort of complete, is Netflix, which moved from being a logistics and distribution company, using a cloud platform to replace that infrastructure, and then pivoting the organization into content creation, is an extremely profound move for an organization on the back of a cloud-driven change. So I want to come to Keisha, because BP at the moment, I think, are very, very far through a large-scale cloud adoption program, and that has started to ripple out into the business. So Keisha, what's going on in BP in terms of their moves towards being cloud-native enterprise?
So for us, because of the nature of our business, it requires us to be in multi-stages of transformation because of the size of our estate and also our diverse application portfolio. So therefore, we can't lean too heavy on one side or the other. We have to do it in parallel. So as you mentioned, we started out first as an infrastructure project, more so, with focus on fixed cost relief and those types of things, and then transformed into after doing a lot of like-for-like moves, trial and error, stop and start, and stop. Then we started moving more into the transformational cloud-native activity, working with our software vendor partners to make even more cloud-native applications. Our culture is more of a network culture because we operate on demand-driven within our environment. So we build innovation in parallel. We build and innovate in parallel. And our journey is becoming more cloud native. Our biggest initiative right now is containerization and moving in that space, which this will enable us to go cloud native on an enterprise scale. But again, it's not one or the other, it's a parallel activity because of where we are.
Very good. And Tara, how would you weave in cloud native culture to that, and how would you describe the difference between a cloud native culture and, say, traditional enterprise culture?
Yeah, well, I think, Keisha's put it really well. It's kind of, I think, particularly when you're looking at scaling an enterprise application, it's probably not one thing or another in terms of being able to point at a culture, but I think it's more of a philosophy. And I think when you're in a small organization, you can have a very relaxed culture that's highly networked. There is a huge amount of empowerment, and that can come together almost instinctively without you having to design for it. When you're starting to do transformation on the scale that you're talking about with examples like BP or other really large organizations, you have to take a blended approach. And so I think if you adopt the philosophy, it's very much about a culture-first organization. It's putting customers and people at the heart of what you're doing. And you're building in kind of key things around empowerment, trust, things like hybrid working, thinking about how you attract and retain and motivate your people, not just people here in the tech function, not people here working on the transformation only, but actually people right through the business and how they align with that change.
Very good, thank you. And let's move on to the second trend, which is about increasing automation in the three main areas of running cloud in a large-scale enterprise. So we break it down into, getting there, modernizing it when you're there, and then ongoing management. It has been fairly typically a people-heavy exercise, a lot of these things, in the sense of you're using new technologies, but you're still often using large teams. And the way, organizations took cost out of migration, for example, was to use fairly traditional labor arbitrage to do that. Then we think what's happening now, I think the tooling is getting mature enough to actually properly begin to start to automate a lot of this stuff and start leveraging cloud tools themselves like AI and machine learning. So CloudReach, for example, has got 3 new products in this space, which we call Smart Migration, Modernization, and Management. And really what that means is a coming together of a software product, so something like a Cloudamize, which can scan your environment, create distribution groups, model on the cloud your environments, and then export that into something like CloudEndure to automate a lot of the migration. Or something like a Sunstone, which is an early product which tries to automate modernization. So it runs underneath your cloud environment on the cloud itself and constantly keeps up with the innovation that's going on in the cloud and populates the backlogs that are going on in your product development teams. And then the moves on in cloud management, we think like services which look like traditional management are not really doing it. They need to be blended with something like professional services to create more like a DevOps structure in its truest sense, where you have innovation blending with operation. And Keisha, BP, I think at this stage are probably one of the world's largest consumers of the AWS cloud. So tell us a little bit about how you're managing the platform at the moment and the challenges that you're seeing given the scale of the moves that you're doing.
Yes, so in fairness, my colleague, Tom Inglis, actually manages the operations of our platforms. I partner with him to then do all of the investment activities. So from my point of view, from a delivery perspective, managing the platforms, which, again, so for me, automation is at the heart of what we do within our platforms and services development. So with every release, we attempt to automate from the bottom up, which allows us to consume the cloud services at scale, but still within the control framework and without compromising any control security frameworks or principles and standards. Our challenge is really speed or velocity. As platform features to build can be a bit complex within our particular space. I'm worrying about scope creep and the time frame. So delivery is hard, and getting it right the first time doesn't always happen.
Right.
And so there's quite a few iterations that we go through with that, and therefore our stakeholders or our customers could get a bit impatient a bit. So therefore you're having to manage those types of things. So for me, and from a delivery perspective, it's just that pace in which we are able to build and do those features, or build those features, and being able to work through that.
And you're balancing that against, say, the cadence of actually exiting data centers.
That is correct.
Yeah, so pretty critical.
Yes.
And so, so what we think over the course of the next year will become a reality is particularly for mature platforms, actually being able to run software across the mature platforms and automate a lot of those changes.
Yes.
How would you see that fitting into an environment like yours?
So again, just the difficulty of the nature of trying to deal with the timing of when we need to exit and then running those things in parallel. I mean, that's what we've had to be good at. And so trying to run that in an environment, which is again why the number of iterations, the testing that has to happen before actually rolling out things into production or cutovers. Those are the things that we have to consider as we work those things in parallel. But it's absolutely necessary, because if we just continue not using cloud native technology and or doing something different, then that's where costs become a factor. And things can get quite out of control. So to continue to progress, to continue to evolve, and to be as optimal as possible, we have to become not experts, but a center of excellence when it comes to managing the variables in a parallel manner.
Cool, very good, thank you. And let's move on to number 3, which is effectively about the evolving nature of cloud architectures, particularly when it comes to getting to remote sites, which is a particular issue for BP, and we'll come on to that in a second. And really, we think the maturation of edge is on the way in terms of a much larger scale adoption than we've seen so far as a result of edge devices themselves getting more powerful and cheaper on a day-by-day basis, coupled with things like the rollout of 5G and the maturation and use of things like outposts to create sort of next-generation application architectures. Acceleration caused by things like large-scale use of this type of architecture for things like track and trace for COVID last year, which, though perhaps you would argue wasn't an entirely successful user experience in a lot of countries, the use of technology, both in terms of leveraging the device as well as leveraging the back-end platforms, was really quite impressive. So in terms of other examples then, the remote monitoring of assets and things like oil and gas have sort of long dabbled with this architecture, really, just because of the nature of how difficult it is of getting to some of the places that you operate in. So where are you up to at the moment in terms of deploying this type of technology?
So right now, where we really see a lot of these challenges is around our offshore platforms, rigs. So we are using 4G connectivity, soon to be 5G connectivity, which will allow us to build a more stable environment and reliable in connections. So we're looking at the edge connectivity to our remote locations to extend our cloud and cloud-like services, and as well as to include in the capture of data from IoT enablement devices, which is what you talked about. And we're doing this at scale currently now, but more so POCs. We have a few things that we've rolled out, but again, it's largely from a POC fashion at the moment, working with AWS and some of the products, but specifically, like I said, utilizing 4G and soon to be 5G.
Right, very cool, very cool. Okay, let's move on in the interest of time. Okay, so we'll talk a little bit about the people aspect now of establishing cloud-native ways of working in organizations. And this is something that we're repositioning a little bit, this notion of DQ, which is an extension of IQ, EQ, and DQ being a digital awareness quotient, which organizations like Gartner positioned a few years ago in regards to an overall organizational maturity. Where we think this is interesting is where you actually don't apply it to the specific leader, and a leader's awareness, a business leader's awareness of how to leverage digital to drive change in their particular business. So it's been long the sort of preserve of IT to be, at least one, if not 2 points removed from business, which is sort of, a little bad on IT, but it's also equally the responsibility of the business owner to sort of reach into leveraging tech these days. It's not, tech is no longer in the basement. It becomes a very significant part of taking an organization forward. Evidenced particularly last year, of course, with the use of collaboration technologies during the early stages of the pandemic, that really drove boards to take notice again of what technology can really do. So it's implicit, we think, in each leader, business leader and technical leader, to really understand how to bring together ways of working, culture, and technology to drive forward their organizations. Tara, this is an area I think that you're fairly familiar with. So first of all, let's talk about DQ and how that relates to things like EQ. Like how from your perspective, with somebody who's a background in psychology, how do these two things come together for you?
Yeah, well, I'm very interested, and I don't know whether the digital quotient was an intended extension of intelligence, emotional intelligence, and now digital quotient. But for me, actually, I just see this as part of the, it's almost the modernization of leadership. And for me, digital quotient it's starting to move away from the leadership challenge being one of implementing technological innovation, technological change, and technological transformation. and really orientating everybody in the business right across leadership, middle management, end users, to be thinking about the change itself, the purpose of the change, the impact it has on the business, the impact it has on customers, and really engaging with them in a conversation around, so why is it we're doing this? What impact is it going to have? And what have I got to contribute to that? So it's no longer that scary. I'm a non-technical person. I work in technical organizations. But it's not about that. It's how do we lead differently? How do we deliver differently? What is the benefit? And by having different technology in place, hopefully of which makes a lot of the repetitive nature of work go away, and really heightens the customer experience and makes it much more personal and relevant. How do we do that? I've got one example of a company I think has done this really well, and that was HSBC when they were moving very much towards their digital banking as the digital first strategy and away from the old bricks and mortar bank. So obviously they had the technical tracks, of course they did, and all the implementation, but what they did is they took all their customer-facing staff, leadership, and then very, very senior leadership at a group level, and put them on a year-long program around building digital awareness, understanding what it meant for customers, engaging in that conversation. And that was a good, 6-7 years ago, and I think that was really forward-thinking at the time and really was thought-provoking for the people involved.
Right. They're absolutely critical to engage sort of wider leadership in that conversation. And Keisha, I know BP have made some strides in this way, particularly as the organization has gone into a wider restructure. So can you give us some insight into how BP has handled this?
Yes, so I definitely feel like this is extremely key and important as far as incorporating the business and everyone else along for the journey and leaders, because I think that's where we probably, if in hindsight, having to do this all over again, that's where I would have started.
Right.
In that particular space, which we didn't quite do that right out the box.
A lot of organizations are not ready for it, are they?
No, they're not. And so for me, well, with BP, with our new reInvent strategy, and I know it's reinvent. But that the business has come to a place where we realize that digital has to be at the forefront of driving where we need to get to our objectives. So the catalyst for getting to our objectives, actually. And so with that, it's extremely important that we're incorporating digital in everything we do. And digital, not necessarily the way that people would properly think of it from a technical standpoint, but digital in the way we think, digital in the way we work. And that could be, again, automating things, making things quicker to get to market, those types of things, almost in the same extent as agile. So again, it's absolutely crucial and critical that we bring everyone along for the journey, because otherwise, all of the things that you talked about at the beginning, the politics, the issues, the problems, all of those things begin with and start and end with and in between with people. So therefore, it's extremely important to bring everyone along for the journey, especially our leaders.
And what's been the response of the leadership group, do you think, to needing to engage with this, particularly those that weren't particularly interested in technology previously?
Well, it's been really great in the sense that, again, it did help that, well, I don't want to say it this way because the pandemic is definitely not a great thing, but we were really prepared for the pandemic because of the migrations and the things that we had done and leveraging cloud technology. And so for that, the business was able to actually see, or everyone was able to see, the importance of it. And anytime that you're trying to do something at as large of a scale as we've been trying to do, with over 10,000 servers, 6,000 applications across the globe, you need everyone to be excited about this. You need everyone to understand their part that they play in this and what did they get out of it. So therefore, people are starting to understand that a bit more now, not even a bit more, a lot more. And as a matter of fact, I think one of the biggest goals that our CEO continues to tout is our percentage on the cloud and what we're doing. And that's because he understands what that is and why that is. And so with that, it drives everyone else to understand what they need to do in order to help us be successful overall. And we all know that manually and what we have without automating things, moving to the cloud, the connectivity that provides, the innovation that it also unlocks, that those things getting there will take longer or not even be possible without digital. So therefore, everyone is on board at this particular point, and for the ones that aren't, It's just, again, showing them where and how they contribute. So that's where we are at BP, and I think, again, that's the reason why we've been able to successfully move as quickly as we have, and to be pretty much, I think we're close to almost 80% for the things that what we are able to do, and migrate to the cloud, which we know we won't be 100% on the cloud for everything, but we're getting there, and it's been good.
It has been a very dramatic and constructively disruptive journey, hasn't it, in terms of, you know, what it's effectively done to the IT organization, and then now how that's rippling out into creating product teams and a value stream structured business.
Absolutely.
So, like, just describe a little bit about, you know, what that journey has been like.
So again, I'll be nice. It's been, what, 5 or 6 years, but it feels like 50. And I say that, again, it's been just a lot of starts, stops, and pushes and pulls, and just an iterative approach and learning. And there isn't a week that does not go by that we haven't learned something new or different. But the main thing is about, again, the right partnerships, the right people, the right skill sets and capabilities, but then making sure that we're bringing everyone along for the journey. And that's been the message. That's been the life that we've been living day to day. And that's figuring out what else do we need to do, and how do we improve, and how do we get better and better and better. And then also accepting the fact that not everything may fit into one. It's not a one size fits all. It's about working with the likes of AWS and CloudReach and all the expertise to then be able to find out what exactly can we do from an innovation perspective. How do we then be the experts at what we're supposed to be from a digital perspective to really enable our business to do what they need to do and what they do best? And how do we do that and have them to do that at pace,
Right.
to be able to meet the goals that are all collectively our goals. So it's been, I definitely could say I've done a lot of things in my career. I know I look like I'm 12.
I was going to say, it only
However,
23.
However, I've been in this business for a long time, and I can definitely say that this has been the one time where I truly say that there's not one part of the business that I haven't touched or haven't talked to.
Yeah.
And then although I've kind of steered away from getting too technical, and I rely quite a bit on my architects and software engineers, but from the standpoint of being able to understand it and watching infrastructure evolve more into software configuration and a true enabler to what we need to do in order to meet our objectives from a digital perspective has been amazing. It's been a great journey. It's been hard and sometimes almost impossible, but I have an awesome team, and they work really, really hard, and we get a lot done. So
Amazing.
yeah,
Well
it's been
done.
amazing.
And let's stay on the subject of awesome teams. And one of the biggest issues we think when you look at, you know, large-scale macro cloud transformation and what might hold it back over the course of the next couple of years is the fact that the talent pool may not be big enough to support the scale of journey that's going on at the moment. So depending on, you know, which statistic that you believe in terms of overall cloud adoption, it's probably in the sort of 20 to 30% of the world's workloads type level in terms of stuff on the cloud. And that's before you get to larger scale modernization or larger scale, you know, cloud native enterprise scale transformation, which is a wholly different level from the beginning of an adoption cycle. Everything becomes more sophisticated in that conversation. And at the moment, the talent pool that we've got is creaking at the seams in terms of being able to support what we're seeing already with the giant scaling going on in cloud providers as well as enterprises across the world really picking up the sort of skills that Keisha's been talking about. And we are hitting a crunch point at the moment where you can see in almost all of our customers and very widely the pace of their cloud transformations getting throttled by the available talent. And of course, and there's, you know, an upside to this for those of us who work in cloud, but also an unsustainable wage inflation that's going on across all of the various different jobs and roles that are going on in cloud, which is making cloud transformation extremely expensive. So let's talk about that a little bit, Tara, and let's start with what's your perspective as an experienced people officer on why we've got ourselves into this situation.
Yeah, well, it's interesting kind of watching the audience there, Dave, while you were talking, and there was definitely nodding heads. And I'm sure that every single person in this audience is seeing one perspective, if not numerous perspectives on this challenge, and it feels like it is the single biggest limiting factor in really kind of accelerating the scale of cow transformation and adoption. Look, I think you don't need me to tell you like what the real basic heart is. It's a supply-demand thing. So there's almost a bit of a victim of our own success here, where as we're seeing demand increase, the supply base of talent has not grown, or it's not growing fast enough. And there's a whole lot of things that go behind that. There's also a rate of innovation, so running very, very fast to keep up. You know, the continuous education, particularly in all the niche specialisms that there are, is a real kind of task. And if you don't build that into your business model, then you're never going to be able to keep up. I think there's a whole lot of other contributing factors as well. There's a failure to plan, I think, at the heart of it. You know, I don't know if there's many chief people officers in this audience, but everybody has a part to play in all of this. So I think for too long, we've just relied on being able to hire for the people we want and not to think too long and hard about actually talent in the sector, what we need now, what we need tomorrow, what we need in 5 years' time. And actually, I think we have to go back to basics, and the market's just not going to provide, the talent's not there. So you need a plan. Every business is going to have a plan. Well, every chief people officer and every chief executive needs a talent plan as well. And it's going to involve time, effort, investment. But actually, if you get it right, you get to name it, you get to develop it in a way that aligns to your business, and also you have the pride in actually kind of doing good in terms of the circle of life in there. And I think there's just one other thing, kind of, Dave, before we move on, is I think there's also huge untapped pools of talent. So I was checking in last night. It was almost like 11:30, 11:30, and the lady was checking me in. She said, "Oh my goodness, a woman there's been hardly any of you today." And I got into a bit of a chat with her, and she said, "Oh yes, and I've only seen one black man all day today." So I said, well, yes, that's part of the reason I'm here, is to talk about, is actually we need to find those additional pools of talent. And when you go out there and do find them, and we've been doing a lot of work in this space because we've just launched a talent academy, which is focused on underserved groups and untapped pools of talent. There's a whole lot of people who are desperate to get into this sector, and they can't find their way in. And it's not just about doing certs.
Right.
It's actually about the hands-on customer experience, real-life problem solving, access to mentors, and all of that. So I've probably given you a longer answer than you wished for there, Dave, but I do think that's an important aspect.
No, it's right to go along on that, and I think the diversity thing is exceptionally important, and it's a word that's used a lot, and I'm not sure though, how convinced are we at this point that it's really being exercised. And I think it's proven when you look at a situation where, for example, if you imagine a squad that's there in place to actually create solution, and that squad was full of people all from the same background, all with the same education, all with the same outlook on life, the sort of the variation in answers you're going to get is going to be a very small aperture of quality involved in that, versus a team where you've got many different perspectives, and that becomes even more important when they're developing customer services. I don't know what your perspective on
That's absolutely right. And you mentioned before, I've got a background in psychology, and I've probably kind of got a list of references, kind of goes on to several pages around just how you get better outcomes with diverse teams, and when you have a lack of diversity, actually how you fail to really genuinely get to the heart of problems across multiple cases. So I think that is really important. I think the other thing that you're saying, people talk about this a lot. I think people are frightened by, I know when we, to be candid, in our organization, we probably started having very open conversations about this 18 months ago, which is a few months after me joining the company, and people don't know where to start. They feel that the language that you use is loaded, and it's almost dangerous territory to get into. And actually, at the heart of it, it's really, really simple. It's about getting the right level of representation, having a look at where you're hiring, how you're bringing people into your business. And if you're doing training programs, then you can look at where you're bringing people actually into the whole sector. And then once you have people in your business, yes, you're not going to get your kind of senior principal architects overnight if they don't exist. It's a multi-year program, but it's about then taking care of those people and making sure you're just checking your own biases, and you're really thinking broadly, and you're thinking about back to the whole customer and purpose thing. You know, why is it we're doing this, and what are we solving for? So it's actually not that difficult. There's a few practical things you can do, and if you stick to it, you will over time see a difference.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Yeah, no, it's such a major issue at the moment, the talent crisis. I guess all of you in the audience, you've probably been tapped up by some recruiter somewhere, and it's very tempting to move on, but it is causing this escalation in cost, right? And it's definitely something that will hopefully get solved.
Okay.
Final trend.
Final trend. So there is a lot of talk about sustainability at the moment, and we see a lot of cloud business cases where sustainability is name checked but not quantified. And what we think will happen over the course of the next year, driven twofold really. One, by the sort of raising social conscience around sustainability, and things like the COP26 conference recently in Glasgow, where sort of firm commitments were made to try to cap temperature increase at below 1.5 degrees. That's going to drive a quantification, we think, back onto enterprises, where all of a sudden enterprises are going to have to make commitments about their carbon footprint, their carbon neutrality, or their carbon-free ways of doing business. And that's likely to create a call to action inside of organizations to begin to control actual consumption. So in the world of cloud, we're expecting some interesting announcements this week from AWS on controlling and identifying the power sources of things like your instances in the cloud, and being able to make sensible decisions about the nature of the power that you're consuming, whether it be traditional power, carbon neutral, or carbon free power. So that makes it quantifiable, and that makes it business caseable in a much more interesting way. What we also think might happen is that new disciplines akin to something like FinOps, where sustainability operations are managed very proactively across your cloud footprints. And in BP, of course, BP are doing a lot of work at the moment as part of their overall sort of broader perspective on energy creation. But let's roll back a year or two, I think, when BP began to exit a lot of their EMEA data centers, and I think had quite a strong agreement with AWS in terms of the power that the AWS data centers were taking.
Right. So for us, I have within my accountability a dedicated portfolio that's focused on digital sustainability, and with that, we've really partnered and focused on our vendor partnerships, such as the one, like you mentioned, with AWS. We want to influence our partners to help with more towards our goals and helping along the journey, because it's a large aspirational goals that we have, and we can't do it alone. And so in order to do that, again, the partnership with the likes of AWS are extremely critical, and moving to the cloud, reducing our carbon emissions, as well as the things that we knew we would get as a byproduct of moving and exiting our data centers. But there's also just the overall, our carbon profile and what that looks like, and then developing our architecture and design frameworks to ensure that everything that we do is taken into consideration. Some of the tools that you mentioned, working with AWS to also make sure that we're building sustainable digital solutions as well. But specifically, the partnership that you're referencing, in 2019, BP, we and Amazon extended our long-term relationship, and with supplying renewable power to Amazon's operations, as well as assisting with the enabling of acceleration of our migrations out of the data center and taking our workloads to their public cloud. So with that, those are some of that's the main deal that we did, or that we worked with, our partnership that we worked with AWS, and of course with some other offtakes of power as well, and just having the flexibility of renewable energy. So for us, those types of partnerships along our sustainability journey are extremely critical, and overall just how we improve the lives of people and environments, and along the lines of DE&I that you talked about as well. Those are the things that I think are absolutely critical for us to partner with CloudReach, AWS, the likes of all of the partners that we've been working with to do that, and being very selective of making sure that the partners that we do choose have the same goals and aspirations that we do from a sustainability perspective. And then we look holistically as to how do we help one another to facilitate those needs, whether that be resourcing needs and or the power offsets or what we need to do around those things. Those are the things that we need to do more of, and more of the things like we did with AWS. So.
And are you at a point yet with your platforms where you can quantify the carbon production as a result of your technology?
We actually can, and we are measuring that and continuing to improve on how we measure that and how we put those metrics out, as well as how we continue to educate folks across the space on what we can do and do more, such as circularity in those particular areas and everything else. So there's so much to do, and there's so many people that want to be involved in this. But again, it's about the partnerships that we build, the expertise that we build, and working together to get after those sustainability goals.
I think, Keisha, you made a great point there about this is the type of work that people want to get involved with. I can imagine right across BP, people are wanting to work in that team.
Yes.
And you know, we talk about the talent crisis, you know, before, and actually some people talk about the war on talent, and I actually don't think it's that at all. I think it's about creating these hooks. And things like sustainability are really, really increasingly important to all of us, and particularly the next generation of talent. So these things are going to be important, and people will select in or select out their career choices on these types of things.
Yes.
So I think it's important for us to really be doing the right thing for lots of reasons, but I think it's also kind of really important to be addressing things that are holding the industry back.
And especially in the younger generation, as we go out to recruit, and that's one of the main key things in the first questions that we're asked around what are we doing around sustainability and contributing to the goals and things that we'd like to improve the environment for the future. And it's one of the deciding factors that we get from a lot of the folks that end up coming on to BP brand new is the fact that they're coming because they hear our new strategy, our new goals, and where we're going, and they see that we're serious about this. It's in our DNA, and we're continuing to push. And that's one of the main reasons why they want to come and join BP and work with us so that we can meet these goals. And like I said, and like you've said, it's just an interesting, not only interesting place to be, but it also serves a purpose that people can relate to, and a purpose that people want to get behind. And so therefore, it's something that definitely is, again, has to be done not alone. It takes all of us and the partnerships that we need to build, the expertise that we need to build, even with the talent, the lack of, or what we're facing now. We have to do that together. We have to solve these problems together. And that's where I think, again, it's just really exciting times. And then how do we do that utilizing the technology? And how do we do that moving that at pace as well?
Very good.
You, Dave, quick question. You being a bit sustainable on your vowels there with the year.
I thought it looked good. Okay, so that sort of rounds up the 6 trends. And the promise of cloud then for us is a wider conversation than purely the technology. It's something where a number of different external factors play together in an organization to create something that involves, you know, maybe profoundly changing the workforces that are underpinning this because of the opportunities created, as well as the overall culture, and of course the technology transformation that enables us to be able to do these things. If you want to hear more about this, we're going to do deeper dives on each of these. Obviously, in the time available, you only get to sort of scratch the surface of some of these subjects. So Jez at the end will tell us about.
Well, let's tell you about it now. So we are on booth 369. You may recognise that song, 369, Streetcar. Anyway, remember that. Come and see us. We are going to be doing what we call boothcasts today. We've got a lovely sort of setup with all our mics. We've got silent disco headphones. Please come along and listen to, we'll put up the timings, and I think on the cards that you've got that are on your chairs on the back there, it's got the different sessions that we're running. we're also giving away some amazing Beats headphones that are branded. So for every session we do, I think we've got 8 pairs of headphones to give away. We're going to be randomly choosing people that have come along and listened to the sessions. And yeah, feel free. We'd love to have you come along.
Yeah, I mean, Keisha and Tara will be joining us for some of those, as well as a number of the AWS enterprise strategists who will be talking about AWS's perspective on some of these things in some detail. And it should be a really good set of sessions. So, pick one or a number and come along and have a listen.
And I'm sure Jeremy's you're not going to sing, right? Sorry.
Definitely not.
Okay.
Definitely. I think
saying.
we've all seen enough of that.
You can. I don't know. I mean, it depends how much you're going to pay me.
Not to sing. Not to sing.
Exactly. Okay, so, I mean, I know really what you came here for was to get the answer for the cloudy cliffhanger that we asked at the beginning, and that's, I guess, why you're hanging on. The question I asked was, in the virtual event last year, how many people registered for reInvent? And I gave you 2 options. We had 380,000 and 540,000. The correct answer is 540,000, so over 500,000 people, which I think is fantastic. So well done to all of those who got that right. Tara, that doesn't include you, I'm afraid.
Yeah, I think I got that one right.
And that,
Yeah, I was going to
That
say, and I
doesn't
actually
happen
went
very
with you,
often.
and
It
it worked.
was
It
right,
worked
wasn't it?
out.
when
Wow.
there's an
That's
A
so
or a
great.
B,
Yes.
you occasionally get these things right.
I know.
So
It
that is
happens
the
sooner or
answer to
later.
the cloudy cliffhanger. So the last bit of the show that we normally do when we're doing the podcast is a little thing that we like to call our TSRs. These are our 10-second recommendations. So these are the things where we like to just recommend something that you can experience, see. We try and take it away from the work side of things, and we've had all sorts of things. We've had shark festivals, sparkling Shiraz, Dave, sparkling Shiraz.
It's underrated.
And we thought we'd just do a little Vegas TSR. So very quickly, Dave, what have you got to recommend for us for Vegas?
See an Elvis show. So
Watch the Elvis
last time we came, there's an Elvis show that runs like all the time, I think.
Really
I
good.
don't think you can get more Vegas than Elvis.
No, it was brilliant. It was brilliant. Tara, what have you got for us?
Well, for any of you that might be jet lagged like myself or are insomniacs, there's a book by Matthew Walker called Why We Sleep, which is a really compelling and very digestible walkthrough of all the research on sleep and why it's so important to us, and kind of how we can better understand that. So
Brilliant.
I've listened to it on an audio book, so I've heard half of it, and the rest of it sent me to sleep. So I don't know. It's both informative and helping me to sleep in two ways. So
Keisha.
very good.
Okay, so I wasn't prepared for this. There's a couple of things.
Didn't read the prep notes.
Fall back on chapstick.
So no, there's this little secret place in the Cosmo that looks like a barber shop, and you go in, and it's a right piano bar, and it's actually quite cool. But I don't want to tell too many people about it and where it is
Secret.
because
Yeah,
that's
keep it
a
secret,
secret.
keep it secret.
And on top of it, you can actually really just chill and enjoy yourself. So there's that. And then also the last time I was here, I discovered these little flower drinks that are also in the Cosmo. I think that they were like legitimately drinks that were given. And those are quite nice. So they're also in the Cosmo. I don't work for the Cosmo. Whatever else.
I'm coming. I'm definitely
Yes.
coming. I've
So,
read up my space.
yes. And I would recommend also, I can't believe this, I'm going to go with you
You're
for the
doing
second
three.
time.
3 TSRs.
Yes, I am. So there you go, with the Elvis
30-second
thing.
record.
All right, done.
Cheers or cheers.
I'm just going to say don't get scammed. I was here on Friday night, and I won't go into it now. Anyone wants to hear my story, come along. But there are some people out here who you think might be very friendly. And I'm not meaning women, I'm just meaning groups of people that are actually there to scam you. And I nearly got sucked in, and I always consider myself a little bit streetwise. I nearly got sucked in.
little
It was only a little bit. At the end of it, I suddenly realised this was a big scam. So, yeah, just watch out for it.
Be
Just
careful.
Don't trust everything, yeah.
Were you sober?
I wasn't, and that was half the problem. Well, I wasn't drunk, wasn't sober, but this is the whole thing. So these are the sessions we're having on the booth. Please do come along. These are the times. You've got them on there. Please do look us up on your podcast app. We are available on all of them. Find us, subscribe, rate. We'd love for you to join the audience. And it's been an absolute pleasure having you. Thanks for coming. Thanks for spending the time with us. And please do come and see us on the booth. We'd love to see you there. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Right.
Oh, and please complete the survey. I was meant to say that as well. Thank you.